Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. I'm Sally Ganga from College Coach. This is going to be a really fun show as my colleague Shannon Vasconcelos will be joining me for the last two segments to answer listener questions. And we've received some really good ones. But first, I'll be talking to Laura Fox. Those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you can see her on the screen. She's a social worker and a mother who just sent one of her own daughters off to college. So we'll be discussing the importance of considering your students' mental health in the very stressful, competitive college process. Welcome, Laura. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So Laura, let's just kind of dig right into this. What do you see with your clients who are high school students regarding their mental health? Like, in other words, why is this issue important?
I think it's important because starting earlier and earlier, kids are getting the message that it is so hard to get into college. I think some of them really believe that they are not going to get into college. And so they're just feeling such tremendous pressure and stress that they're not good enough. And that the world is so competitive. So we're seeing a lot more anxiety, a lot more depression among our youth, among our teens. And the colleges are also reporting that they're not equipped to deal with the mental health issues that they're seeing in incoming classes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think your point is really good. Like, I'm not a therapist, but I talk to students, and if they don't get into their first choice early action or early decision, super competitive college, they suddenly want to add in a bunch of colleges. And I have to really reassure them, it's okay, we planned for this. I know it's disappointing, but that's why you're applying to these other colleges too. And then similarly, when they do get in, even if it's to a college that wasn't a first choice, but I had them apply early action, they'll say to me, I'm going to college. And I'm like,
right.
I always knew that you were. Like, that was the plan, like of
Yeah.
course you're going to college, but the panic is so clear.
Yes.
And I have to spend so much time going, it's okay, we planned for this. Remember, I talked about a plan A, plan B, plan C. We've got all those plans into effect. So let's kind of dig into that too. Like, how can parents really help their students with this?
Well, I think, for parents to also understand that the plan B school on the list might be where your child will actually thrive. So, while you think maybe it's your job as a parent to get them into that plan A plus school, sometimes for your kid's emotional well-being and then ultimate success in life, occupationally, they're better off sometimes at their plan B school, because that's where there's a little bit more room to really thrive, grow, dig into the material and not feel as overwhelmed. So I just think reminding the parents that their kid will get into college and that their kid will be where they're supposed to be. It may sound cliche, but I've seen it where, a kid that I'm working with maybe went to their plan B school. And so, but at that plan B school, maybe it's not as prestigious of a school that they could have gone to, but while they're there, they're really able to connect with professors and do research and dig in and figure out what they're passionate about. Whereas maybe at a more competitive environment, they wouldn't have had that.
Yeah, I've actually faced situations with students where they really wanted to gun for one of these highly stressful environments. And I was like, look, I'm here to support you, but I got to let you know, I've got these concerns that the whole time you're here, you're going to be stretched beyond belief, and you're not going to have the space to like explore things and like have a social life.
Right. I didn't even think of
should be social
life.
too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, college should be challenging, but not overwhelming. And it should be a growing time socially and emotionally as well.
Exactly. And some of the kids, because they're so under so much pressure in high school and they're, not taking any breaks or, they really don't have the coping skills that we want them and need them to have when they're then on their own in college.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Can you give examples of some of the coping skills? I know you're not going to talk about your clients, nor should you, but like what are some of the skills that you think students are missing out on in high school because they're so focused on that reach school and then they don't even have in college? Like let's kind of talk about it.
I think there's, maybe they're always so stretched and they're taking so many classes and there's no time to breathe. There's no time to just learn to regulate your emotions, learn to work through something. Everything's a crisis. So you don't really learn that it's okay to work through something. And so maybe kids will start to cope using drugs and alcohol as a way to just numb themselves, or it could be even just social media. And so they don't get a chance to develop other coping skills, like whether it's reading, taking a walk, going to the gym, other things to chill out. They just kind of work really hard, but then they party really, really hard. And that's not always the best way to cope.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm actually, it's kind of funny because sometimes the parents I talk to are very worried about, like, I've seen this mostly in boys, who they're worried about their sons because their sons are pretty relaxed. Like they're getting their work done, but if they get a B, they don't panic. They refuse to take every class they could. They take a kind of a balanced class. And I kind of push back and say, I actually think your son's going to do really well in life because he's really got like I've seen this a couple of times and they are still getting into great schools. Yeah, no, it's not MIT. Who cares?
Right, that's right. Because they find that niche. They connect with that professor. They're more confident in
Mhm,
their abilities, and they're also really discovering what they're really passionate about.
mhm,
Instead of the focus being on, well, how is this going to look on my college application, the focus becomes, do I really like this? Am I really good at this? Does
mhm.
this bring me joy? And I think sometimes kids don't really realize that that's also really what we want them to be doing.
Yeah, I think that ability to say what they like and what they don't like is such a healthy sign. And sometimes with these students, I'll say, well, for some of the colleges we've talked about, they're going to want XYZ. And they'll say, well, I don't want to do that. So I guess that's okay. Where could I go where this will be fine? And I'll say, well, all these other great schools. And then they're like, okay,
So
like then,
that's a really healthy mindset.
mm-hmm,
But
mm-hmm.
a lot of kids, aren't feeling that way, and they don't think that they can have that choice and really figure that out. And that's when we get into, where it's impacting them emotionally.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to be clear with those students. Sometimes I'm just trying to think about parents listening to this. I will push them a little bit if I really think you
Yeah.
could do a little more. And most of the time they find their level really well. If I say, look, at taking another year of a foreign language would be a good idea. Do you really hate the class or is it just sort of not your preference? And they're like, no, it's not my preference, but I can do that.
Right.
That's totally fine. And I'm like, great. That sounds like the good
Hmm.
compromise. But then the other thing, they're like, no, I really don't want to do that. I really wouldn't be happy. I'm like, all right, that's the line then. You don't do that, you know?
Right. And it's
So,
important for parents to support that,
mhm,
because
mhm.
ultimately your kid will be healthier and they will, take more ownership of their own future when they've made a decision like that.
Yeah, some other, I think, techniques that are helpful that parents, I think, can really help their students out with is if they're taking a super heavy course load, really encourage them to take a free period. You and I discussed this
Yeah.
when we talked yesterday. So why don't you talk about some of the benefits of that?
you know, Honestly, just to be able to take that break and breathe, just to be able to look out the window, have a conversation with someone, but to go from class to class to class to class and have no time to eat or breathe is just impacting them. They're exhausted by the end of the day and just mentally spent. So I would always encourage, adults too, right? With the adults that I work with, I will say to them, you got to get up from your desk at work and go take a walk,
Hmm.
right? Because you come back and you can be so much more creative. We want these kids, to be they're taking these classes that are at a very high level and that are really demanding and taxing on their brains. So they need to take care of those brains by, nourishing them with, other aspects, other things, and then being able to come back to the work and really delve in.
Mm.
Instead, we see, 16, 17-year-olds who are burnt out and they haven't even begun. And that's not what we want.
Right. And even if I know parents are concerned about the mental health of their students now, but I also like to stress again that it's not going to help them in college if that's how they enter college. There have been terrible stories of students who, oops, I just dropped my phone, sorry. There have been terrible stories of students who seem to have life by the horns, figured out, and then they killed themselves. And it's a horrible thing to discuss. But I think that's like just the sort of the tip of the iceberg of the
we want kids to know that there's room for error. Right? That there's, we're setting up this expectation, maybe sophomore, junior year, that there's no room for failure. There's no room for mistakes. You need to get, these very high grades and these very high marks, and you need to be involved in all these organizations. And if you don't, well, then you will not succeed. And I think it's really important to take a step back with yourself and your children and kind of define what really is success, and really, explain and really think for yourselves, was everything so perfect in your life, right? Because I think in our generation, we didn't see everything as such a pressure cooker, and, not everything seemed like life or death. And for a lot of these kids, they really see it that way. It's either all or nothing. And so they need to understand that it's okay to get a bad grade, and it's okay not to be perfect, and it's okay to struggle. It's okay just to be a member of the club and not the president of the club.
The other thing too that I wanted to mention that like you talked about, and it completely jives with our advice actually, even about what the colleges are looking for, is not needing to be a member of every single club either. Right? Yeah. Pick a couple activities that you really care about and invest yourself into those. And I think not only do colleges like that, but I think, and you can let me know if my thinking is correct about this, it also allows students to really feel passionate about something. If they just pick a couple things they really care about, they're going to invest themselves because they want to.
I think that lesson is really less is more. And I myself, I may be a therapist, but I'm also a mom. So, my senior this summer, really came to me and she said, "You know what, Mom, I have so much going on. I'm taking these AP classes and I really don't want to do varsity tennis." And my first thought was, oh my God, well, no, you have to do varsity tennis. The colleges need to see that you did varsity tennis. It's so important. And I spoke with my college advisor, who really said to me, no, it's okay. And I let my daughter, I honored her desire. I think she was a little surprised too when I said, okay, you don't need to do it. And what I really saw was she was able to delve into her AP classes and get so much out of them and really think and do that deep level thinking that was needed at this level. And she was able to really dive into some of her art classes. And we had such a more relaxing first, quarter when she was doing her applications, and she ended up getting into the school she wanted. So, it didn't hurt her, but emotionally it was so much better. And she was so much less tired.
I have to say, and I have to say too, that the disappointment that I see in students who do everything that they think they're supposed to do, so they haven't lived their authentic life in high school at all. I mean, it's not a matter of making a few compromises. Literally everything they've done has been for college, and then they still don't get into their top choice. The disappointment is so profound, and yet these schools are admitting less than 4% in some cases.
Right.
So you're probably not getting in no matter what you do. I mean, that's the hard fact with the most selective ones,
Right. So it's so much more important to figure out, what works for you and how you are the most relaxed, the most, able to engage person that you can be. And that's what we want to be telling our kids. So I needed that little lesson. I needed that reminder this August when my daughter came to me. And I was so happy that my college advisor kind of set me straight. And I was able to see my daughter thrive and had I not, listened to that, I don't know what the semester would have been like for her. She would have been
Mhm.
very stressed out.
And she's probably going to be happier in college because she had a good final year of high school.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So any sort of last points that you wish I'd asked you about, or last kind of pieces of advice that you want to give to parents? I mean, you can give it to students too, but I think most of our audience is the parents. So,
Yeah, I really think it's like just to remember that less is more, and more isn't always better.
mhm,
So, and that kind of is in everything that we're doing with these kids, and really, like you said, Sally, to always remind them it's okay not to be perfect. Right?
mhm,
We're not expecting perfection. There's a college out there for everyone. There's a job, a career. Not everyone needs to take an absolute straight path. It's
mhm,
okay to take breaks. It's
mhm,
okay, to change your mind. You can change your mind at any time. And that's
mhm.
okay in terms of what your major is and what you want to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing I'll say to parents too, that I say to them regularly is if your child is making mistakes now, that's actually a good thing because you're there
Yes.
to help them through it. And so the first
Hmm.
time they have a disappointment is not going to be when they're away from home, when they don't have the tools to
Yeah.
deal
And
with it.
mistakes are okay. We've all made mistakes. Yeah.
Yeah.
There has to be room in our world, in our, lives for our kids to make mistakes.
Hmm.
That's how we learn. That's how we grow.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
You too. All right.
Bye-bye.
So we're going to take a break, everyone. And when we come back, Shannon Vasconcelos and I will be answering listener questions.